Sometimes in history, a single event can feel like a light going out. That's really the case with Hypatia. We're going to talk about her incredible life and the brutal murder of her brilliant mind. Okay, take a look at this. It's a painting from centuries later, but it tries to capture this absolutely terrifying moment, an ambush right on a city street. And the target? It wasn't some general or an emperor. The person being dragged from that carriage was one of the most brilliant philosophers of her time. This wasn't just any murder. It was an absolute shock to the system. We're talking about Alexandria, the ancient world's equivalent of Silicon Valley, and a university town all rolled into one. And right there, in March of 415 AD, a mob just brutally murders one of the most respected people in the city. So that leads to the big questions, right? Who was this remarkable woman, Hypatia? And what could she have possibly done to become the target of such vicious hatred? To get to the bottom of it, we really have to rewind and look at who she was and what she represented. Yeah, because before she was a victim, Hypatia was an absolute star, a luminary. For decades, she wasn't just in Alexandria, she was one of the city's most influential people, and this was a city famous for its brainpower. Look at this list. Hypatia was what we'd call a true polymath, a Neoplatonist philosopher, so she's tackling the big questions about reality, a mathematician and an astronomer, charting the stars. But really, her biggest gift? She was an incredible teacher. Her school drew the best and brightest from all over the Roman Empire. And get this, the most powerful leaders in the city, pagan, Christian, you name it, they all came to her for advice. And don't just take my word for it. This isn't us looking back with rose-colored glasses. This quote comes from a Christian historian, Socrates Scholasticus, who was alive at the same time. He wrote that she far surpassed all the philosophers of her own time. Just let that sink in. Even people who might have disagreed with her philosophy had to admit, wow, this woman is on another level. And her influence really did cross all sorts of divides. What you're looking at here is a letter, an actual surviving letter from one of her most famous students, a guy named Synesius. Now, he went on to become a really powerful Christian bishop, but he never forgot his teacher. He always called her his mother, sister, and teacher. It's just such a powerful testament to the kind of respect and affection she inspired. Now, it's important to get her role right. Hypatia wasn't necessarily this radical innovator, discovering brand new theories. She was something arguably even more important, a brilliant teacher and a preserver of knowledge. Think of her as a master guide. She took the super complex works of mathematical geniuses and made them understandable. She probably even edited the definitive version of Ptolemy's Almagest, which was the book on astronomy for the next 1,000 years. Her whole thing was making the wisdom of the past clear for the future. Okay, so if she was so respected, so brilliant, how on earth did she end up in mortal danger? Well, her downfall had very little to do with her ideas and everything to do with a nasty political power struggle that was tearing her city apart. So at the heart of this conflict were two very powerful men. In one corner, you have Orestes. He's the Roman governor of the city, a Christian, and, crucially, a close friend of Hypatia's who really valued her advice. And in the other corner, you have Cyril. He's the new bishop of Alexandria, and he's ambitious, he's militant, and he's not about to share power. Cyril looked at Orestes and saw a rival. And when he looked at Hypatia, he saw the influential woman whispering in his rival's ear. And man, things got ugly fast. It all kicks off in 412 when the old, more tolerant bishop dies and his nephew Cyril takes over. Within 2 years, Cyril has expelled the entire Jewish population from the city, which, as you can imagine, absolutely enrages the governor, Orestes. Then things get personal. A mob of monks loyal to Cyril actually attacks Orestes in the street. And this is where Hypatia gets sucked into the vortex. By 415, a rumor starts flying around that she's the reason Orestes won't make peace with Cyril. All of a sudden, she's not a respected philosopher anymore. In the eyes of Cyril's followers, she's a political enemy. So the stage was set. The city was a powder keg of political tension. And Hypatia, simply because of her friendship with the governor, had been painted as this major obstacle to Bishop Cyril's ambitions. And then, during the Christian holy season of Lent, the unthinkable happens. Ancient historians tell us a mob, led by a church reader named Peter, ambushed her carriage. They dragged her into a church, stripped her naked, and murdered her with ostraca, basically sharpened roof tiles or oyster shells. And the horror didn't even stop there. They dismembered her body, dragged her remains through the city streets, and then burned them. I mean, an act of that level of brutality against a famous public intellectual, it was just unheard of. The news sent shockwaves across the entire Roman Empire. Overnight, Hypatia the person was gone, and Hypatia the symbol was born. In an age where Christian orthodoxy was really consolidating its power, she instantly became a martyr for the old classical way of learning, a victim of this toxic cocktail of political ambition and religious fanaticism. But Hypatia's story doesn't end in that church in 415. In a way, her death was just the beginning of her legend. Her story has been told and retold and completely reshaped by every era that came after her. She's had so many lives, it's incredible. Right after she died, she was the martyr for pagan philosophy. Then, a few centuries later, and this is a wild twist, her story gets borrowed and becomes the basis for a brand new Christian saint, Saint Catherine of Alexandria. Jump forward to the 1700s, the Enlightenment, and she's suddenly this icon of reason standing up to religious fanaticism. In the 1800s, she's a tragic romantic heroine, and today, we see her as a precursor to the feminist movement, a symbol of a brilliant woman in STEM. And this right here really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have an astrolabe, a complex scientific instrument that she helped build and teach people to use, a tool of science. And on the other, an icon of Saint Catherine, the Christian martyr whose legend was literally built on the bones of Hypatia's story. It's the perfect picture of her legacy's bizarre journey from a real scientist to a religious legend. Okay, before we wrap up, let's do a little myth-busting. There's a very famous story that links Hypatia's death to the burning of the Great Library of Alexandria. It's super dramatic, but it's not true. The Great Library as a major institution was pretty much gone long before Hypatia was even born. Her murder was a tragedy, for sure, but it was a tragedy of politics and mob violence, not a war on a library. So what does it all mean? Well, Hypatia's story, and how it keeps changing, is the perfect example of how history isn't just a set of facts, it's a story. And we're always retelling those stories from the past to make sense of our present. It kind of makes you wonder, right? Whose stories from our own time are we already reshaping to become the myths and legends of the future?